Welcome back to the Rebel's Edge, where Pete Najarian and I will be going over the top news stories of the day, which of course has to include the interest rate picture as interest rates keep going up, even as the Fed has said they should be going down. We'll see who wins, the bond vigilantes or the FOMC, on today's Rebel's Edge. Bang!
All right, we're cranking along, man. It's earnings season. It's been fun already, John. A lot of movement, a lot of things going on. You got the Fed going on. I mean, we are jam-packed with info, baby.
Oh, yeah. And it's, as you say, Pete, it's a time that makes both of us smile, folks, because uncertainties are met with certainty because somebody comes out with earnings. It was uncertain whether they would beat or miss. And then we get the certainty of whichever they did do, and that drives the stocks. And we're going to be talking about that exactly in about 2 minutes, because we always give 1 minute to macro and 1 minute to fantastic futures. So I'm going to dive right in, Pete, and say, well, macro minute, rising treasury yields. Yep, that's what we started with. You know where they are now, folks? They went over 4.21%. They were below 3.6% when the Fed cut. So right now, I'd say the bond vigilantes, Pete, are winning versus the FOMC. What say you?
I'd say you're right, and I'll hit a little bit more on fantastic futures with that one, John, but I'm just going to say, from a macro perspective, we are looking at earnings, and they seem more meaningful now than they ever have before. Just like the data that's been giving the Fed the information that they need has gotten bigger than it's ever been before. This earnings season has been incredible. We started off, obviously, with many of the biggest banks out there, and that was a big, strong beat across the board, it seemed like. But now we've had a couple of hitches in the giddy up, and it's going to be interesting because not everybody's crushing, but most of them still are. It's a really, really big earnings season.
Absolutely it is, and we always look forward to it, like I said. All right, now Fantastic Futures, brought to you by Hard Assets Alliance. And the reason that Pete and I love these Hard Asset Alliance guys is that, number one, yeah, you could go to Costco and buy some gold, but you got to take it home with you. That's not the end of the world, of course. Many of us want the gold in our own hot little hands. But if you don't want to take it home and you don't have a big old safe or someplace to keep it where you think it will stay safe, well, you should scan that right on the screen there, using your cell phone. Scan that, the best way to invest in gold and silver, because that'll take you to Hard Assets Alliance. And when you go there, you'll see that nice picture of Pete and John. And they have over 10 different dealers competing for price. Whereas you go to some numismatic store, in other words, some place that sells you gold coins and so forth, they might ding you for 7% on the way in, 7% on the way out. You got to make 14% to break even, folks. So if you would like also to not take this gold home, they have Brinks vaults around the world where you can elect to say, you know what, I'm putting my gold in the Brinks vaults with you guys. Pretty damn safe and insured. Check out Hard Assets Alliance. And I think you'll be very happy with the service and certainly with the option of taking it home or not, and instead just storing it in a safe place with Brinks. All right. So, Pete, fantastic futures today. Yeah, I could hit gold because it's up $17, but I'm going to take a look also at crude oil because once again, up over 2% today. Crude oil is back through $72 to the barrel. And for the most part, that isn't good.
Well, that's an interesting one. I'm going to give this one, John. I was going to hit the 10-year right here just because I think it's so interesting, and that's what's really causing the markets to have a lot of questions being asked and all that, the rest of that. But I can't help but do silver. You and I have talked about how silver had a hard time getting over 30, staying over 30, and then suddenly it didn't. And now you're looking at not only 52-week highs, but decade highs now for silver because we're all the way up there pushing on 35. So as we were talking about this sponsor, we're also looking at gold, but we're looking at silver. Silver's absolutely ripping. It's been going up and up and up. It took a long time to be able to sustain over 30, but now it seems to be a pretty good distance from 30, $34 to $35, John. This is on fire. I have not seen silver move like this in quite some time. Pretty interesting, and I think it's something that people ought to pay attention to.
All right, Pete, let's talk a little bit about Philip Morris, because IOQS and ZYN, ZYN, I know a lot of people out there don't know what this is, but a lot more of them do know what it is, Pete, because ZYN is one of those nicotine pouches that have become wildly popular with so many people. Some use it to get off of smoking. Others just use it for that nicotine rush and so forth. But you know what, Pete? Revenue up 8.4% year over year to $9.91 billion. Organic basis, revenue jumped 11.6%. So smokeless tobacco, killing it. The ZYN and OIQS also killing it for Philip Morris.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a really good reason why this stock, John, today was pushing right up on those 52-week highs. Last I looked, it hadn't gotten through there, but it was right on the edge of bursting through there. So that was really something. When you look at the earnings year over year, absolutely unbelievable, from $1.67 all the way to $1.91. That's a huge jump. But I think the most important thing, and you kept talking about ZYN, that is where the growth is, John. They talked about shipping. Now, they talked about those shipments being up 41%. So they are getting it out there. They're slinging it around. Philip Morris is back. They're running to the upside. It's been an incredible number. I could not find a number in there, John, that didn't look great. And that's why that stock was moving very nicely to the upside. Last I looked, it was up about 7%. It might be more by now. It's been moving to the upside all morning. It's been an incredible ride.
In fact, Pete, it has hit a new, as you said, 52-week high, over 129 to the share. And we had unusual activity, folks. I mean, take a look at this one, 10/16. So that was just 6 days ago, folks. So Philip Morris calls being bought. You know our deal. Pete and I like to buy at the money calls. Well, the right to buy it at 120 when it trades up to nearly 130 is worth $10. $10. So you took a nice big profit on that one if you were a subscriber to Market Rebellion and our unusual activity. All right, let's hit the next one, Pete. GE Aerospace. So when you see this symbol, you might think back to 30 Rock and Jack and Tina Fey and all those stars on that show. And Jack was always talking about heading the GE microwave division. Well, they've spun that off because this is GE Aerospace, Pete, with the symbol GE, and shares falling. And yes, we had unusual activity in this one as well. So they came out with earnings, and the stock was 192.65 just a couple days ago. Well, yesterday it closed at 194.23, but look at where it traded down to. Now it bounced a little from that horrible sell-off, but if you had those puts that we were talking about, folks, you are a very happy camper, and or you protected your big investment in GE Aerospace.
Yeah, absolutely. And incredible. That's a huge win, John. You've got to like it no matter which side it was. If it was an insurance policy that you're buying there with those puts, or if you just were out there able to be naked buying those puts and getting this big, huge move to the downside. Unbelievable. Stock's gotten hit, as you said. Volumes are incredibly strong. John, one of the things that's really interesting about this is they talked about the decline in LEAP engines, and those are those fuel-efficient turbofans and so forth. That's down about 10%. That's one of the issues that really does stand out to me of why GE Aerospace is getting punched in the face today. I don't think you need to chase after this one, John. I think it's one of those where you can coast along, keep an eye on this thing. Obviously, those puts were right. People are going to close those out. They're going to fix all that up. But we got to see what kind of options give us in the future, because right now this is a stock that's definitely struggling, I would say, especially with their revenue and everything else where they've missed here and there and everywhere. I'd stay away from this one, at least for right now.
Yeah, and folks, you know that Rolls-Royce, Pratt & Whitney, and GE Aerospace are the three big engine manufacturers, and all of them have to be hurting at least a little, Pete, from the problems over at Boeing. Enough said about that, I guess. All right. Some problems also, Pete, perhaps at Verizon. They had mixed third quarter results. Earnings beat, but the stock dipped, basically falling pretty nastily. They said they added 239,000 wireless phone counts, subscribers, if you will. That topped the estimate of 218,000. But there were some other parts of this earnings report that weren't so great, Pete. And for that reason, Verizon under pressure, along with the broad market today.
And one of those areas that you were just referring to, John, is that wireless equipment sales. That was not a good number. And so you're always trying to pull apart, all right, where was the weak spot? Are we concerned about that? I would be a little bit concerned about that. Although, some of those numbers of ads that they're talking about, John, those are pretty strong. They were looking for 218,000. They got 239,000. So that's a pretty decent beat. I'd go back and forth and say, you know what? Maybe where it is right now isn't such a bad entry point if you're interested in Verizon. You do get that yield. I don't ever buy anything for the yield, but if that's a bonus on top, then I'm okay with it. They got about a 6% yield. I think that sounds pretty good when you're looking at this stock. They're hitting it, John, but I think when you look at the 33 to 45 as far as the range, the 52-week range, it's still sitting right around 41, 42. I think that's an opportunity. This is a stock that, under the right circumstances, if things can pick up a little bit, I think goes right back up and tests that $45 high.
All right. Well, so there you have a little bit of insight from Pete about waiting and being patient, but also maybe another assault on that high. Mm-hmm. All right. How about this one, Pete? Logitech. Now, we know during the pandemic, they crushed it with their cameras because everybody was doing Zoom calls. And a lot of the peripherals, like, a mouse or whatever it might be, wireless or wired. Logitech is a Swiss-based company that provides all of that. Well, they reported 120. The estimate was 110 a share. Their revenue also beat. They raised guidance, Pete, for 2025, and yet shares are down 10%. 10%. And the CEO is saying, hey, this quarter we delivered continued robust, profitable growth. I don't really see what the problem was here, Pete, but people were taking profits with both hands out like this. That means they were selling.
When in doubt, palms out, and people were in doubt. And I agree with you, John. I had to search to find anything because it looked like a good number, to your point. The one thing I did find was that they disappointed in the outlook to some degree. They were looking for certain numbers. I think they missed it just by a fraction, and that might be what people are a little bit concerned about. Otherwise, it looked like a great quarter. But as you and I talk about all the time, it's great to have those earnings. It's great to have those revenues and the sales and the different areas, but it's what you say it looks like into the future. They looked like they were going for a $4.39 billion to $4.47 billion, but the folks out there were looking for $4.51 billion. So it did miss underneath that slightly. I think that's the only thing I could find. And given that, I think the way this thing's gotten beaten, John, this is one where I think I'd start sniffing around a little bit, because if that was the only reason and it was that close to where it really was, the estimates anyway, I think this one's probably worth it down here, getting beat up today bad and very near the 52-week lows.
Yeah. I mean, again, just examine those numbers on your own, folks. Again, we don't pull the trigger for you on your trades, but to Pete's point and mine, I didn't see anything bad in these numbers.
No.
Certainly their sales of all their peripherals appear to be going pretty well. The only one, like you said, Pete, the only one that was really down was the webcam sales. And that's basically because, it was preloaded. They forward sold those cameras that they would have sold in 23 and 24, basically in 21 because of the pandemic. Not as many people just are out there scrambling to buy cameras.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk a little bit, if you don't mind, Pete, about sports, because I know the NFL is always something that you focus on. So give us the 411.
Well, the NBA is just kicking off. The NHL is just kicking off. Baseball finally got it all figured out. It's not going to be a Subway Series. It's going to be going back and forth from LA to New York. And, I think all those were fairly obvious. And they've got the big hitters coming, John. They ought to have some really good viewership going after this one, because this is going to be great. I mean, with Ohtani on one side, obviously, and then all the big hitters you've got with the Yankees, it's going to be a really, really fun series. But, that's to come. Right now, I think if anybody watched a little bit of NFL over the weekend and a little bit of NFL last night, I've got something for you. Who are the best two teams in all of football right now in your mind? And I'm going to tell you, my mind is this, John. The Baltimore Ravens on the AFC side. I know everybody will say, well, it's Kansas City, Pete. I'm going to go with the Baltimore Ravens, and then I'm going to go with the Detroit Lions. And why do I pick those two? Because they've got two coaches, Harbaugh and Campbell, who I think are two of the very best coaches in the NFL right now. And why do I say that? Well, Dan Campbell went out and understands when you've got a quarterback, you still need something other than just a wide receiver, John. You got to have a running back. You and I both played linebacker in the NFL. You were with the Bears. I was with Minnesota and Tampa. When you've got a running game or a threat of a running game, you have a much different defense that's going to have to work against that offense. And let me tell you something. With Gibbs and Montgomery right now, they've got 165 carries, 850 yards. It's about 5.2 yards a carry. Now, if you can get a 2nd and 5 against the defense, you've got them in the right spot. How about Henry, King Henry, Derrick Henry? I think Lamar Jackson should be the happiest guy on planet Earth right now. He doesn't have to put his body in harm's way. He still runs the football, but he doesn't have to. He's got Derrick Henry, and anybody who watched last night's game against Tampa, you just saw the best physical running back I have ever seen. The guy's 6'2", 6'3", 250 pounds, 2% body fat, John. Oh, and for the year, he's averaging 6.5 yards a carry. So in other words, if they need it, they can get it using him. And Lamar doesn't have to force it, but it gives him the opportunity to have more time back there, a lot more room to look for his receivers, and he's got some great ones. Minnesota's Bateman is one of his best. I just have to throw that in there. But Lamar is 68% completions. He's got 15 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. And then you look over at the other side, John, Jared Goff, he's got 140 passer rating right now in the last 4 games. 140 passer rating. I'd say the guy, and by the way, against the Vikings, who everybody loves our defense, they did give up a few yards, by the way. I don't understand what everybody else is watching when I see something different. But the guy had 22 of 25, John, for 280 yards, Jared Goff. He had a game where he had a perfect game already this year as well. And he also had a game where I think he was something like 20 of 22. I would say that those guys are reaping all of the goods because of the running game. And everybody else in the NFL still thinks it's a passing league. You got to throw the ball, but you know what? If you run the ball, you can throw the ball. Do you agree on
you control the clock?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, truly, folks. I mean, part of it is keeping the ball out of the hands of Patrick Mahomes. Patrick's not having a great year, by the way, this year.
Right.
He's 21st out of the 32 quarterbacks in the league right now, which is pretty bizarre. Yeah. All right. Let me ask you this, Pete. The Vikings played them right down to the wire. They're up 29-28. Mm-hmm. And you know who beat them? Well, yeah, Goff put him in position for the field goal. But that field goal kicker, Pete, was basically an indoor kicker. I mean, that guy was playing in the indoor leagues and things like that. And he was a bricklayer, I think, before the Lions called him up when their kicker got hurt. Mm-hmm. That other kicker might never come back because this guy can hit from over 60 yards. In fact, he had never missed in a game, Pete. Never missed in a game until a couple of years ago. So this kid is pretty special. I've got a video I'll share with you tomorrow on him, Pete. But what else you got as far as sports?
All right, this one's a little bit quicker. Sorry, I was long-winded on the other one. But college football, NCAA college football is right now, John, so exciting. I can't even believe it. Because of why? I got to give credit. It's the portal. The fact that there's a portal out there. Now, I still don't like the idea that, if the coach is pretty rough on you, you could jump in the portal and you leave a school and you go somewhere else. That part is unfortunate, I think. But when you look around, John, and Alabama has 2 losses, Georgia's got a loss, Texas has a loss, LSU started the season off with a loss, Clemson's got a loss, all the usual suspects, right? They've got a loss. Sooner or later, Oregon's probably going to get a loss. Ohio State's probably going to get a loss. And you know what? We're going to start seeing where everybody is. But the competitive nature of the game right now has put us in a position where it's not just Georgia. It's not just Alabama. It is expanding out there. And oh, by the way, you do have a guy like, I don't know, BYU, Iowa State. They're both still undefeated, John. Indiana is still undefeated. And with opportunities in front of them, as long as their quarterback can be healthy. And I think he got hurt this last week, but he needs to get healthy quick. But I'll tell you what, John, it's an amazing year, I think, for college football, because when you think Texas is the best team in football, they get beat. When you think it's Georgia, they get beat. When you think it's Alabama or Tennessee or Ole Miss or whoever, it's amazing how much parity has come into college football, which is going to make this whole playoff really, really interesting, because I think everybody was saying, well, you know, 1-loss teams, if you got 2 losses, you're not in there. I push on that big time now. If you got 2 losses, you still got a shot. And I think Alabama and Ole Miss and some of those that are on the outside, if they win out, I think that they're going to get in there. But I think the portal, I gotta say, it actually has made college football better.
Yeah, well, I don't disagree, Pete. And it's better for all the athletes, better for volleyball players. How'd you like to be playing behind some just phenom and you couldn't get onto the court? That's a problem. Or couldn't get onto the field in baseball or whatever it might be, field hockey. The fact that you're able to move, now the portal's different for football, I understand, than it is for volleyball and baseball and all that kind of stuff. But basically, the same rules apply. You can just go. And it used to be you had to sit out a year. Now you can just go to some other school and play. And I think that's tremendous for the athletes, because think how many athletes you never got to see, Pete, because they might have been the number 2 quarterback behind just a phenomenal, Heisman Award winner or something like that. I think this is great for sports. I think it's great for college athletes. And I agree with you. I think the portal's a good thing. NIL, I'm still not down with the NIL, the way it's being distributed. But, I'm for all these kids making all they can make. But I'm not really down with how the quarterback might get $2.5 or $3 million like Shedeur and maybe Travis Hunter. And the rest of the guys are just kind of sitting there. Hey, where's mine?
What about me?
Donuts, coupons? What?
Very true.
Folks, Pete and I are going to be on with Liz Clayman tomorrow in New York City. We're looking forward to that. We will be coming to you from New York City tomorrow. We appreciate all you joining us. Make sure you check us out at 1 p.m. tomorrow. See you then.